Allara Merritt walked into the courtroom wearing the uniform she had served in for nearly 3 decades. Her posture was straight, her medals polished, and her silence unshaken. She thought today would be about settling paperwork, sorting out property, maybe some awkward conversations, nothing more. But the moment she stepped inside, something felt off. Her mother didn't smile, her father avoided her eyes. Lucas and Eva sat together, hands clasped, faces set like stone. And then it began. Their lawyer stood up and with surgical coldness began a list of accusations that Allara was mentally unstable, that years in combat had made her paranoid and delusional, that she had manipulated their elderly parents into signing away family assets, that she no longer had the capacity to make decisions for herself. The courtroom air turned heavy. Not a single person looked surprised. And Allara, she said nothing. Not yet. Because she knew this wasn't just betrayal, this was an ambush. Allara didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch when her own mother called her unstable. Instead, she reached into her briefcase with the same precision she once used to disarm explosives. She pulled out a single sheet of paper. Nothing more. No stacks of evidence, no dramatic speech, just one document. She stood up slowly, walked to the judge's bench. Her boots echoed against the courtroom floor, each step deliberate, each step silent. She placed the paper in front of the judge and said calmly, "Your Honor, with your permission, I believe this should be read before any further ruling is made." The judge adjusted his glasses. He began reading. First line, second line. His expression shifted. His jaw tightened. His brow furrowed. Then he looked up, not at Allara, not at the family, but at the bailiff. "Close the doors," he said, voice sharp and cold. "No one leaves." And in that moment, the courtroom changed. No longer a family dispute. This was now a federal operation in progress. They didn't hear sirens. There were no warnings, no countdown, just the sound of boots, fast, heavy, methodical, echoing down the hallway. The courtroom doors swung open hard. Federal agents entered, silent and precise. Their jackets bore the letters that make most hearts freeze, FBI. Gasps rippled through the room. The judge didn't blink. He simply nodded. They had been waiting for this moment. One agent went straight to Lucas. Another closed in on Eva. A third approached the bench and whispered something to the judge. He nodded again once, curtly. Handcuffs clicked. Lucas stood up fast, his chair crashing backward. "What the hell is this?" he barked. The agent's response was calm, mechanical. "Lucas Merritt, you are under federal investigation. Sit down." Eva froze. Her eyes darted wildly. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Allara never moved. She stood still, like steel forged in fire. Because she wasn't surprised. She knew exactly what was coming. She had written it into motion. With one paper, one truth. And the family that once tried to erase her was now being erased by justice. What did she write on that single sheet of paper that tore an entire bloodline apart? It came on a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning where nothing feels wrong until everything does. Allara sat at the kitchen table, old ceramic mug, burnt coffee, silence. Then, ding, a new email. Subject line, confirmation of veteran relief enrollment. Sender, National Military Assistance Fund. Her brows furrowed. She hadn't enrolled in anything. She didn't need relief. Her military benefits were active, her finances modest but stable. She clicked it open and froze. The email had her full legal name, her military ID, her home address, even deployment dates, some of which were classified. Someone out there had everything, and they were using it. She printed the email. The paper felt cold in her hands. She studied the bottom corner. A smudge, barely visible. A faint trace of light blue ink, almost unnoticeable, but not to Allara. Not to someone trained to find what others missed. She'd seen that stain before, years ago, on someone's fingertips. Lucas. When they were teenagers, he used to work part-time at a local print shop. He always came home with light blue ink stains on his hands, no matter how hard he scrubbed. He hated it, said it made him feel dirty. And now, decades later, that same ink had come back, not as a memory, but as evidence. Allara didn't speak, didn't react. She just stared at the page, at the smudge. And for the first time, she knew exactly where to look. The lasagna still steamed. Glasses clinked softly. A candle flickered in the center of the table. It looked like a normal family dinner. But Allara's stomach was stone. She barely touched her food. Her eyes studied each face. Her mother, her father, Lucas, Eva. They were laughing about a TV show, casually mentioning groceries, smiling like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't just tried to erase her. She cleared her throat, set her fork down. Her voice didn't tremble, but the room shifted the moment she spoke. Why was my name removed from the house deed? Lucas didn't look up from his plate. It's just business, he mumbled, nothing personal. Her mother's fork paused in midair. Her gaze didn't rise. She spoke quietly, soft, almost rehearsed. Lucas said you didn't need it. That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just an assumption. You don't belong. Allara leaned back in her chair. The candlelight danced across her uniform badge. And in that moment, something broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like a crack beneath ice. Silent, deep, irreversible. They hadn't just stolen from her. They had decided she was no longer part of them. Allara didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't slam doors or demand explanations. That wasn't how she was trained. She had spent years in war zones where panic got people killed and silence saved lives. And so when her family tried to erase her, she didn't react like a daughter. She responded like a soldier. She went quiet, and she started digging, one file at a time, one signature, one timestamp, one buried record. She opened her old secure laptop, the same one she used to track cyber threats in the field. Her fingers moved with quiet precision. Every document she reviewed felt like a knife in her gut. Not because of the lies, but because of the names. Her father's initials, her mother's handwriting, Lucas's digital signature. Each page wasn't just paperwork. It was betrayal coded in the language of people who once tucked her in at night. And still, she didn't flinch. She was a soldier, and soldiers don't flinch. They track, they analyze, they wait. And when the time comes, they strike. At first, it looked like clerical noise. A few financial documents didn't add up, just odd account numbers, weird transaction timings. But Allara had seen this pattern before, in war zones, in Black Ops intel drops, ghost money. She cross-referenced names, and her stomach twisted. They were veterans, soldiers, men and women she vaguely remembered from VA hospitals, ceremonies, funerals. But many of them were dead, and yet there they were, receiving payments. Filing claims, applying for aid. Dead men with active bank accounts. She dug deeper. A company name kept appearing, Violin Group Holdings. On the surface, just a consulting firm. Beneath it, a shell company, registered in a tax haven, tied to Eva's so-called therapy practice, and linked to every single fraudulent veteran file. Allara's heart didn't race. Her breath didn't quicken. She wasn't shocked. She was confirming a suspicion. Someone had built a machine using the names of the dead to move money no one would question, because what system would ever doubt a soldier's name? She was scrolling through the metadata of yet another patient file, one of Eva's therapy records, when she saw it. Her name, in the authorization field, Colonel Allara Merritt. At first, she froze. Then her breath grew shallow. She checked again. There it was, her digital signature, stamped onto the form like a seal of credibility. like she had approved the entire program. But she hadn't. She never had. They weren't just stealing dead veterans' identities, they were stealing hers, her clearance, her military status, her spotless record, earned through blood, dust, and years of silence. They had used her name as a shield to bypass inspections, to validate forged mental health treatments, to funnel millions through fake initiatives she never knew existed. Every time someone looked into the documents, they saw her, and they stopped digging, because why would anyone question the name of a decorated officer with a medal for cybersecurity intelligence? Allara leaned back in her chair. Her chest didn't rise. Her eyes didn't blink. But in her mind, something detonated. They didn't just betray me. They built their empire on my name. The first call came just after midnight. Unknown number, no caller ID, just static. Then a voice. Distorted. Mechanical. Impossible to tell if it was male or female. This isn't your war. Walk away. Click. Deadline. Allara sat frozen, not out of fear, but focus. She'd heard voices like that before. Encrypted channels. Covert ops. This wasn't a prank. Later that same night, she noticed it. A car, parked across the street, lights off. No license plate. It didn't move, not for hours. She watched it from her window. A shadow inside. Still, watching. Her hand reached for the side drawer. The Glock was still there. She didn't call the police. She didn't panic, because deep inside, she already knew this wasn't just about fraud anymore. The nightmares returned, not of war, not of battlefields or fallen comrades, but of home, of a little girl standing in a hallway forgotten, of birthday cakes with one candle missing, of Lucas pulling the legs off her favorite doll, of her mother's cold stare when Allara cried too loudly. She had buried these memories, deep, like classified files locked in a vault. But the voices had cracked something open, and now they burned. She remembered waiting at the window for her father's car, a promise to take her to the park. He never showed up. Lucas did. Told her, "Dad said you're too boring. I get to go instead." That night, she never asked again. She remembered one Christmas morning, Allara gave her parents a gift she saved up for months to buy. They smiled politely and gave Lucas a new bicycle. Her gift, a thank you card. No signature. Allara wasn't unloved. She was tolerated. And now, as she stared at the blank screen in her dark room, surrounded by silence, threats, and betrayal, she finally whispered to herself, "They never chose me. Not when I was 8, not when I was 28, not now." It happened over dinner, a slip of the tongue. Eva was talking too much, bragging about her global outreach therapy work, her international clients, how even Arvos was impressed. That word, Arvos. To anyone else, it would mean nothing, but to Allara, it hit like a code red alert. Arvos, International, wasn't just a company. It was a name whispered in military briefings, a known front for international espionage, sanctioned cyber attacks, medical data leaks, and deep infiltration operations targeting military personnel. The agency Allara once worked for had flagged them, blacklisted, classified threat tier 2. And now Eva was casually name-dropping it over steak and wine like it was some brand of designer therapy. Allara didn't flinch, didn't blink. She just listened. And everything shifted. This wasn't about inheritance. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about national security. It was about treason. She put down her fork. This was never just about me. She came alone, no badge. No lawyer, no uniform, just Allara, and a question that had haunted her since childhood. She stood across from them, her mother sitting with a cup of tea, her father silent in the corner. Why him and not me? Her mother looked up, calm, distant, as if the answer had always been obvious. Lucas stayed. You left. You always had your missions, your medals. You didn't need us." Allara swallowed. "So you chose him because he was nearer?" Her father finally spoke. His voice cracked, but he didn't look at her. "Sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who stays when the doors close." Allara laughed, bitter, quiet. "Then why was I always the one knocking?" No one answered. The room was full of furniture, photos, memories. But for Allara, it had never felt emptier. The silence hung thick. Allara stood still, eyes wet, hands trembling just slightly. But she didn't fall apart. Instead, she breathed in deep, grounded, and spoke words she had never dared say before. "Family isn't who shares your name. It's who stays when you're breaking." Her voice shook, but the truth in it filled the room. "You call Lucas the loyal one, but he stole from me, from others. He used your love like a weapon." She looked her mother in the eyes, "And you let him." Tears streamed down, but she didn't wipe them. "I fought for a country that gave me scars. But I thought this house, this family was where I'd be safe." She paused. One last breath. "I was wrong." Then, calmly, without drama, without anger, she turned and walked away. Not because she was weak, but because she finally knew blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does, and they had none left to give. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. There were no final words, only footsteps. And a file folder. It wasn't thick, but it was heavy. Heavy with fraudulent signatures, classified medical records, laundered transfers, and the weight of betrayal. Allara didn't look back. She had come as a daughter. She left as something else, a witness, a soldier without a flag, a keeper of truth. And as she stepped into the gray morning light, papers clutched to her chest, she whispered the last goodbye in her heart. "I'm not your child anymore. I'm the one who ends this." The line had been drawn, and she was ready to cross it. The room was packed. Cameras, reporters, whispers. Allara stood alone. No uniform, no rank, only the weight of her name and what it meant. Across the aisle, Lucas sat beside his lawyer, clean suit, rehearsed smirk, the image of a wronged little brother. And then it began. His attorney stepped forward, charming, confident, deadly with words. "My client has nothing but respect for his sister. But this is a matter of justice for a family neglected, a mother forgotten, a reputation stained by someone who used her military badge to abandon the very people she was supposed to protect." He paused for effect. "We're not here to attack her service, but service does not excuse selfishness." Eyes turned to Allara. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She said nothing, because sometimes silence is the most dangerous thing in the room. She stood. No notes, no rebuttals, no anger, just one page, folded, clean, precise. Allara walked to the bench, every step echoing in the silent courtroom. She handed the paper to the judge, then returned to her seat, still silent. The judge unfolded it and read. His face, calm just a moment ago, twitched, then tightened. He looked up, voice like a blade. "Close the courtroom doors. No one leaves." Gasps, rustling. Reporters dropped their pens. 2 federal agents rose from the back, moved fast. Cuffed Lucas and Eva on the spot. Lucas stammered, "Wait, this is a misunderstanding." But the judge cut him off. "You used her name to steal over $3 million from veteran aid programs. You forged documents. You signed off on private medical access codes. You compromised military systems." The room exploded in disbelief. But Allara, she didn't move. Because truth doesn't need volume. It just needs timing. The judge's voice didn't rise. It didn't have to. "Close the courtroom. No one leaves." Steel doors slammed shut, echoed like gunshots. 2 more agents emerged, badges flashed, precision in motion. Eva screamed, "I didn't know, I swear! Lucas made me." Lucas, frozen, pale, as if his own spine had given out. Cameras clicked, reporters whispered, and then silence, because what had just happened was the death of a legacy. No drama, no explosion. Just the quiet collapse of a family built on manipulation, fraud, and entitlement. A name that once held pride, now dripped with disgrace. And at the center of it all, Allara Merritt sat still. No tears, no smile, just breath. Because the war was over, and she had won without ever firing a shot. They called her a hero. They called her a traitor. She exposed her own family. She did what no one else dared. She turned on blood. She stood for truth. Headlines clashed. TV anchors debated. Podcasts dissected her every step. And Allara, she didn't speak. She didn't post. She didn't defend herself. Because some wars aren't meant to be understood by spectators. She walked through airports where strangers whispered her name, sat through interviews she politely declined, listened to voicemail after voicemail, some full of gratitude, others full of rage. But through it all, she remained still. Because this wasn't about applause. It never was. Truth isn't always celebrated, she once wrote in her notebook. Sometimes it's just survived. And that was enough for her. She didn't start with a speech, or a press release, or a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Just a small rented room, 3 folding chairs, 1 mission. No veteran should be used, abandoned, or erased. She called it the Sentinel Foundation. It wasn't just a nonprofit. It was her reply to the world, to everyone who said, let it go. She didn't let it go. She built something out of it. Within months, emails poured in. My dad's identity was stolen too. They forged my discharge papers. I thought no one would believe me. And then one letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. It simply read, "Because of you, my family didn't fall apart. You don't know me, but you saved us." Allara held the letter for a long time. She didn't cry, but she did smile. Soft, quiet, like someone finally breathing again. Because this time, she wasn't fighting to survive. She was building something worth living for. She stood at the edge of the ocean. No medals, no uniform, no noise. Just wind, salt, and her breath. She didn't come here to forgive them. She didn't come to forget. She came to remember herself. The girl who believed in duty. The woman who uncovered betrayal. The soldier who chose silence over spectacle. And the survivor who built something sacred from ashes. The waves rolled in, not to wash things away, but to remind her what stays, stays. Truth. Not always clean, not always kind, but hers. Not every war ends with banners, she whispered. Some just end when you stop bleeding. And she was done bleeding. Allara Merritt walked away from the water. Not because she was leaving something behind, but because she was finally walking towards something that was hers. Peace. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who once called us family. But pain doesn't define you, and silence doesn't mean surrender. Allara's story reminds us truth doesn't need applause. It just needs one person brave enough to protect it. So if you've ever been told to stay quiet or made to feel like your worth depends on who accepts you, remember, family is not blood. Family is who stands with you when everything else falls apart. If this story moved you, if it made you think, cry, or feel just a little less alone, subscribe to the channel. Because here, every voice matters, especially the ones that were told to stay silent. Your story is power. Your truth is enough. And you belong here.